The rain fell in sheets that evening, blurring the city lights and turning the streets into rivers of reflections. Street lamps flickered in the storm, casting shaky pools of light on the slick pavement. Cars splashed through puddles as their tires hissed against the wet road, and umbrellas battled against the wind, bending and snapping under its force. The city felt alive and chaotic, yet eerily lonely. Arav, a young man in his early 20s, navigated the flooded streets on his small, battered motorcycle. His jacket was soaked, clinging to him like a second skin, but he barely noticed. His mind was heavy with thoughts about his day, work at the bookstore, helping his younger brother with his homework, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. Life had not been kind to Arav, but his heart, soft and compassionate, had always found room to care for others. He slowed down as he approached a narrow alley beside a street market. Amid the noise of honking cars and shouting vendors, something caught his eye, a faint, shivering figure leaning against a wall. Arav squinted, trying to make sense of the shape in the pouring rain. It was a woman, her clothes drenched, her hands pressed against her stomach, and her face pale with pain. She rocked gently back and forth, as if trying to soothe herself, but each movement made a small groan escape her lips. Arav's heart tightened. Someone needs help. I can't just leave her here, he whispered, his voice almost lost in the sound of the storm. He switched off his motorcycle, leaving it on the side, and hurried toward her. Ma'am, are you okay? He called, keeping his voice calm yet urgent. The woman lifted her head slowly, her dark hair plastered to her face, eyes wide with shock and fear. I don't feel well, she murmured weakly, her voice trembling. Arav gently offered her his arm. Let me help you. Can you stand? She tried to nod but nearly collapsed, her body trembling violently. Arav reacted instinctively, wrapping one arm around her waist and supporting her, while his other hand held her hand firmly. Step by careful step, he guided her to the small motorcycle shelter nearby, providing some protection from the rain. Arav's thoughts raced. Why is she out here alone, in this weather? Is it something serious? He could see that her skin was clammy, her breathing shallow, and the tight grip she had on her stomach told him this wasn't a minor ailment. You're going to be okay. Just hold on a little longer, he reassured her. There was no hesitation in his voice, just pure instinct, a need to help another human being in distress. After a brief pause, Arav realized he couldn't wait for an ambulance to navigate the narrow, traffic-clogged streets. We need to get you to the hospital, now, he said firmly. He helped her into his motorcycle jacket, protecting her as best as he could, and lifted her carefully onto his bike. She gripped his shoulders tightly, fear and pain mingling in her eyes. As they rode through the storm, Arav's mind remained focused on her. He couldn't see her face clearly under the hood in the rain, but he could hear her soft groans and shallow breaths. Each second felt stretched, the city lights and shadows whipping past them in a blur. Arav's inner voice, stay calm. Don't panic, just get her there safely. He maneuvered carefully through the congested streets, avoiding potholes and puddles that could throw them off balance. Every splash from passing cars made him flinch, worried that even the smallest misstep could endanger her life. Halfway through the ride, she spoke again, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry, for bothering you. Arav shook his head. You're not bothering me. You need help. That's all that matters right now. A faint smile touched her lips. Though the pain was still evident, Arav could feel the tension in her body, the fear of being vulnerable, of depending on a stranger. He knew she must have been someone important, someone who wasn't used to being helpless, but he didn't dwell on it. Right now, urgency mattered more than curiosity. The hospital came into view, a warm beacon in the storm. Its bright lights cut through the rain, and the sound of rushing water and tires splashing faded behind them. Arav slowed, guiding the bike to the emergency entrance. Arav, almost there, just a few more steps. He helped her off the bike and guided her inside, where the warmth and bright lights were a stark contrast to the cold, wet streets. The receptionist's eyes widened as they saw the young man supporting a struggling woman. Receptionist, sir, who are you? Do you have ID or insurance for her? Arav didn't hesitate. She needs help now. Please, get a doctor. I'll explain everything later. Doctors and nurses immediately rushed to take the woman from his arms. Arav stepped back, watching anxiously as she was wheeled into the emergency room. He felt a strange combination of relief and helplessness, relief that she was finally in safe hands, helpless because all he could do now was wait. While waiting, Arav reflected on his life. He had always tried to do the right thing, helping neighbors, aiding strangers, and volunteering at the local shelter. Yet, nothing in his experience had prepared him for the intensity of this moment. He felt a mix of fear, hope, and quiet pride. Time crawled. The storm outside showed no signs of stopping, the rain beating relentlessly against the hospital windows. Every footstep in the corridor echoed loudly in his ears, each sound making his heart race. Then, finally, a nurse approached him, her expression softening. "Nurse, she's stable now, you did the right thing, young man. By the way, do you know who she is?" Arav shook his head. "No, should I?" Nurse, smiling faintly, "She's the mayor's wife." Arav froze, his mind struggling to process the information. The mayor's wife. The woman he had helped in the rain, the one in such visible pain, she was someone of immense importance. The realization struck him with a mixture of awe and disbelief. He had acted without thought for fame, recognition, or reward, and yet fate had placed him in the path of someone extraordinary. For a moment, he stood there in stunned silence, watching the nurses move quickly through the emergency room. The rain continued outside, relentless as ever, but inside, a quiet warmth settled over him. He had done the right thing, and in that moment, nothing else seemed to matter. He thought about the countless people in the city who might never experience such kindness, who might never have someone stop to help them. And yet, he had acted naturally, instinctively, because he couldn't do otherwise. The thought made him smile softly, a small sense of satisfaction warming his chest despite the exhaustion and the cold that still clung to him. As he waited for any update, Arav replayed every moment of the night in his mind, the rain-soaked street, the way she had leaned into him, her groans of pain, and the fear that had filled her eyes. He realized how fragile life could be, how quickly circumstances could change, and how much impact a single act of compassion could have. And though he didn't yet know what awaited him next, the recognition, the meeting with the mayor, or the life-changing consequences of his action, he felt an undeniable sense of purpose. This night, this storm, and this woman had shown him something profound. True kindness asks for nothing in return, and sometimes, the smallest gestures create ripples far beyond what we can imagine. The storm raged on outside, but inside the hospital, a quiet calm had settled. Arav leaned against the wall, soaked to the bone, yet feeling strangely alive. He had stepped into the unknown, offered help when it was needed most, and in return, discovered that sometimes, fate rewards those who act without thought of reward. For now, all he could do was wait, hope, and quietly marvel at the unusual twist of kindness that had brought him here. An ordinary young man, a rain-soaked street, and a woman whose identity would forever change the trajectory of his life. Chapter 2. The rain had finally eased by morning, leaving the streets glistening under the soft light of dawn. Arav's jacket, still damp from the previous night, clung uncomfortably to him as he walked through the city toward the bookstore where he worked. The events of the night replayed endlessly in his mind, the storm, the frantic drive, the woman in pain, and the shocking revelation of her identity. He had hardly slept. The nurse's words echoed in his mind, "She's the mayor's wife." At first, he had been stunned. The mayor's wife, someone so important, someone accustomed to a life of luxury and privilege, and he had helped her without hesitation, without thinking about status, recognition, or reward. It was absurd, and yet, the thought filled him with a quiet sense of pride. He hadn't acted for fame, he had acted because it was the right thing to do. As he walked, Arav noticed the city buzzing with unusual energy. People stopped to whisper to each other, and some even stared at him curiously as he passed. At first, he assumed it was nothing, but then he heard a snippet of conversation from a nearby cafe. "Did you hear about the mayor's wife? That young man saved her last night." Arav's stomach sank. He hadn't asked for any recognition. He had only helped someone in need. But now, the news had spread like wildfire. Social media was abuzz with the story, pictures of the hospital entrance, and headlines praising an unknown hero. The city seemed to have fallen in love with him, even though he barely understood what had happened. By mid-morning, Arav received a phone call that made his heart race. The voice on the other end was formal and authoritative. Mayor's secretary, Mr. Arav, the mayor would like to meet you at City Hall today. It is regarding last night's incident. Please come at your earliest convenience. Arav hesitated, unsure what to expect. City Hall felt like a world away from the narrow streets and small bookstore where he had spent his life. Still, curiosity and a sense of responsibility propelled him forward. He quickly changed, leaving behind his soaked jacket, and took a cab to the grand, imposing building that seemed to hum with power and authority. Scene 1. The meeting at City Hall. City Hall was a maze of polished marble floors, high ceilings, and golden chandeliers. Arav felt out of place, a simple young man in a world of protocol, security, and expectation. As he entered the mayor's office, he was greeted by a secretary who led him into a grand room. At the far end, the mayor sat behind a massive wooden desk, his expression a mixture of sternness and curiosity. Mayor, Mr. Arav, thank you for coming. I hear you saved my wife last night. Arav bowed his head respectfully. It was nothing, sir. She needed help, and I did what anyone should have done. The mayor's eyes narrowed slightly, as if evaluating the sincerity of his words. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Mayor, most people would have hesitated. Most people would have called an ambulance and driven past. But you didn't. You acted immediately. That takes courage. That takes character. Arav's heart pounded. He had never expected such praise, let alone from someone in such a position of power. At that moment, the door opened, and she entered, the mayor's wife. Arav's breath caught. She looked nothing like the vulnerable woman he had carried through the rain. Now, standing tall and composed, her presence commanded the room. But beneath her polished exterior, he could still see the traces of pain in her eyes. Mayor's wife, Arav, she said softly, her voice calm yet warm, I want to thank you personally. You didn't know who I was. You didn't hesitate to help me when I needed it most. That is rare these days. Arav's face flushed. I only did what I thought was right. I didn't expect. It was never about. His words faltered, humbled by the gravity of the situation. Mayor's wife, smiling gently, and that is exactly why it meant so much. Kindness is more powerful when it asks for nothing in return. Scene 2. Recognition and reward. Word of Arav's heroic act spread rapidly. Local news channels aired interviews, and social media praised the young man who had risked everything to save the mayor's wife. While some celebrated him as a hero, Arav remained humble, insisting that anyone in his position would have acted the same way. The mayor, however, insisted on showing his gratitude. He offered Arav a scholarship to continue his education, a permanent position in the city administration, and even recognition at the city's annual awards ceremony. Arav was overwhelmed but politely declined most of the material rewards. Instead, he asked for only one thing. Arav, I just hope that my actions inspire others. That people learn to help without thinking about reward or recognition. That's the real reward for me. The mayor and his wife exchanged glances, clearly impressed by his integrity. Mayor, very well, but I insist you attend the ceremony. The city should know about someone like you. And so, Arav agreed, understanding that his story could inspire countless others, spreading the message of selfless kindness. Scene 3. The Charity Connection. A few days later, the mayor's wife invited Arav to participate in a charity initiative she led, focused on helping underprivileged families and vulnerable individuals in the city. Mayor's wife, you've seen what it's like to struggle and still help. That perspective is invaluable. We need people like you to guide this project. Arav agreed, eager to continue making a difference in people's lives. What started as a single act of compassion had now become an opportunity to impact the city in a larger way. During the initial meetings, Arav noticed the difference between his humble perspective and the polished, sometimes detached approach of city officials. Yet, he never wavered. He spoke from the heart, sharing stories of people he had helped, and slowly, the team began to see the value of genuine empathy in their work. The mayor's wife often observed him quietly, sometimes smiling to herself at his unassuming nature. Despite the attention, the praise, and the sudden fame, Arav remained grounded, a reminder that true heroism often lives in humility. Scene 4. A changed perspective. Weeks passed, and Arav's life shifted in ways he had never imagined. The bookstore became a secondary concern as he devoted more time to charity work and helping the community. People recognized him on the streets, often offering words of gratitude or sharing their own experiences of hardship. Yet, despite the accolades and recognition, Arav never changed. He still walked the rainy streets with the same quiet determination, helping strangers, listening to their stories, and offering support wherever he could. One evening, as he walked through a familiar street market, he noticed a small child crying over a lost toy. Without hesitation, Arav knelt down, comforted the child, and helped retrieve the toy. The child's mother watched with a mix of relief and admiration, murmuring, "You're a good man." Arav smiled softly, realizing that fame, recognition, and even gratitude were fleeting. What mattered most were these small moments, moments where he could make a tangible difference in someone's life. Narration, voiceover. Kindness is not about recognition. It is about action, about choosing to do what is right even when the world watches or does not. One small act can ripple across lives in ways we cannot imagine, and sometimes, it reaches those we never expected. Scene 5. The Ripple Effect. Months later, Arav found himself at the City Awards ceremony, sitting humbly in the audience. The mayor publicly recognized him, sharing the story of the rainy night, the unknown young man, and the selfless act that saved his wife. Cameras flashed, applause erupted, and Arav remained quiet, simply nodding. After the ceremony, the mayor's wife approached him privately. "Mayor's wife, you've changed more than just my life. You've inspired so many. People are helping more, noticing the world around them, choosing kindness because of you." Arav shook his head. "I'm no different from anyone else. I just did what needed to be done." She smiled knowingly. "That is exactly why you're extraordinary." The encounter left Arav reflective. He realized that true heroism didn't always come with medals or recognition. It often came in quiet, unnoticed moments, rippling outward to touch lives in unimaginable ways. And sometimes, it brought him back full circle to the streets, the rain, and the very people he had always sought to help. Scene 6. The Final Realization. Walking home that evening, Arav glanced at the city skyline as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The streets, once chaotic, now shimmered with possibility. He had saved a life, connected with people of influence, and even changed the way his city perceived compassion. And yet, the most important lesson lingered in his heart. True kindness is selfless, true courage is quiet, and the world is transformed not by grand gestures alone, but by small acts of love, empathy, and courage repeated endlessly. Arav smiled, knowing that his story was only beginning. The unusual twist of kindness, the stormy night, the vulnerable woman, the unexpected connection, had changed him forever. And perhaps, through him, it would change the city too.